I guess somebody let me know when we're ready to start.
Anytime.
Okay, getting started right now. Chris, you hitting record or me? Hold on, let me hit record. Oh, 420. One. All right, I hit record, just waiting for that to start.
Yeah, maybe we should have went a day early. Done one yesterday.
No one would have been here to do it.
Okay,
That's true.
here we go.
We'd have to send
Hi, everybody. Welcome to AROYA Office Hours Live. My name is Keisha, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. A couple of reminders before we get started. This hour is your chance to hear from the experts, get answers in real time about data you're seeing with your grow, and to share cultivation tips and tricks with other growers in this exciting industry. We thank everybody in advance for not using this time for things like airing policy or industry grievances or asking about AROYA pricing, although you're always welcome to book a demo. But feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time. And if your question is selected, we'll have you unmute yourself and ask away. Anyone who asks their questions live today for the first time will get an AROYA hat. We're going to limit that to U.S. residents, only one hat per household. Plus, all of our session attendees today are going to be entered into a drawing to win a limited edition AROYA t-shirt. Seth, Jason, hello. How are you guys doing? You got one of those t-shirts around? We can show everybody what that looks like?
We do. We got, the back is the most exciting here, I guess. This is the new Arroyo shirt. And then
nice.
the Kush kebab there. And then
I got to get my hands on one of those. That's pretty sharp. All right. So folks, anybody who's joining us today, if you want to enter to win and wear a t-shirt, enter your email address in the chat and we'll get that over to you. Seth and Jason, how you doing? What's going on?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah, pretty good. It's finally starting to look like spring here. We've got, liquid water instead of snow coming from the sky. So that's always good.
It's growing season right around the corner.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you ready for our first question from Instagram, or is there something you wanted to start with today?
Just wish everyone happy 420, a day late. Obviously, if you are a day late and celebrating, then you can be a few days late all week.
I do know I was out visiting some farms on 420, and I hope not everyone was working super hard. So, yeah.
I think we're ready, Keisha, whenever you want to start.
Sweet. Yeah. And actually, speaking of 420, we actually have we did 13 playlists for 420. Did you guys catch that? We created those. And they're on Spotify now. You guys want to jump on that? All right, well, why don't I get us going with our first question from Instagram here. This one came from Chris Mix. They are asking, where should the Terrace 12 be placed in uni slabs with a 4x4x4 on top, given using the measurement tool for vertical height and the best location of irrigation stakes in this media setup? And if the cubes were over-dried, can using slabs still provide a good root structure?
All right, we got a few questions in there. Let's hit the placement on the first one. For uni slabs, it's going to be at the same height as the slabs. So I think that's going to be 1.25 inches based on that installation tool, that installation template. So go ahead and do it just like you would in a slab. Just throw it right somewhere in the middle of the unislab is the best. 4x4x4s on unislabs, pretty good combination. Any of those 4x substrates are some of my favorites for vegging out. It's got a little bit less volume than, say, a Jumbo or Hugo, and you can make sure that your water contents are very dynamic. You don't overwater, etc. You don't waste rock wool. They're a great size. 4x4x3, 4x4x4, any of that stuff. It's a great size to veg on. Mm-hmm. Where the drip stakes going to be, keep those in your 4x4s. Yep. So usually if we've got try to make a square with my hands.
We should have brought a prop.
Yeah, we should have. If you've got a square, you want to be kind of in the diagonal corners across from each other. So two drip stakes. We like the 0.3 gallon per hour drip stakes are some of our favorite. That low drip rate really helps the capillary effect of the substrate, keep that water from just running through and really soak up the media.
Yeah, and there's, on top of that, you're going to want to make sure your sensor placement is on the same side of the blocks on your table so that you don't have, sensors that are downhill and sensors that are uphill. And there's not going to be a huge difference there, but it's nice to be consistent so you're comparing apples to apples all the time. And then as far as over drying goes, when you do stack that block on top of the unislab, that is actually going to help quite a bit if you've managed to over dry that block during veg. Is provided you fully hydrate your unislab and never let it go below 40% roughly.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so when we're looking at plants late in flower, a lot of times, that stalk is going to be quite a ways down into that 4x4. Those roots are going to seek out the water content in the unislab. And as long as that unislab is staying properly hydrated, the 4x4 is not going to contribute almost at all in the later stages after that plant's rooted well into the unislab.
Yep.
Call it root crown?
Yep, exactly. I mean, by the time you harvest that plant, you can almost grab that 4x4x4 and break it in half and just have beefed up stem in there.
Awesome. Great, you guys. Thank you for that. Our next question comes from Baby Got Drybacks. They are asking, what lighting system do you think works best with Arroya?
Any of them? The sun, LED, HPS, metal halide. Arroyo doesn't really care about your light system too much. We're able to interpret light data from the quantum sensor. It's calibrated for HPS, for metal halide, for the sunshine, for LEDs of different spectrums, whether that be full spectrum or selected spectrum. That's a high quality quantum sensor. I think it's the SQ521 from Apogee that we use. And really, the differences there is going to be how you're modifying your environmental parameters based on the lighting type that you have, and making sure that you're watching your drybacks, getting the appropriate EC in there. So one of the things that kind of comes up when I'm thinking about the lighting type is some of the impacts of radiation. And so anything like an HPS, we're going to have a little bit more long wave radiation in there, and that has a tendency to heat up the leaf surface. And so if we are moving from something like HPS to LED, there's a good chance that we'll need to bump up the temperature of the room a little bit, and probably even provide a little bit more EC, a little bit more nutrients in there to keep up with those plants and the new light spectrums.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to look at is, really quantify your environment and figure out what you're capable of in there without, So if you currently have HPS and you think LED is going to be the best option, let's look at your humidity, look at the heat inputs into the room and how that's going to change. And then say, okay, is it better to put my money into developing my HVAC system to handle all this additional biomass in the room? And usually the answer is yes. You want to do that well before you make any change in your lighting. Either way, really, HPS to LED and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've worked with a number of people that when they switch from HPS to LED, they're not burning off quite as much humidity, and they run into dehumidification caps. Simply now because they don't have those bulbs burning off some of the humidity that they're used to not having to pull out of the room with dehumidifiers.
Oh, exactly. And this last week I've been going around the Northwest here, and it's springtime. The humidity is insane outside, so no matter what, you're fighting it. You don't really have an option to access dry air from outside. You're making humidity inside, so really nailing down that. Basically looking at your absolute humidity and seeing what you're capable of is pretty crucial.
It sure is. And I mean, obviously, if you do run out of dehumidification or humidification constraints, then working with your VPD to run off that. And so, right now we're looking at, here in Pullman, we've got 61% humidity over at the airport. Fortunately, in my greenhouse right now, we're about 40% humidity. But I was watching some of this stuff, last night. We were running about 90% there, and so it does make it a challenge, especially for the greenhouse growers, to keep a balanced environment through the climate, through the different seasons, the climates in the different seasons.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to look at every extreme and prepare for it. And unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to even look back on, say, the last 20 years of weather data and accurately predict what's going to happen next year, and make sure you've got the equipment to handle it.
I think it's why so many of us get jealous of the growers down there in the Emerald Triangle. It's a really nice, stable environment to grow in.
Yeah, they don't have quite as hard of a winter. or quite as hot of a summer sometimes. So,
and that humidity is nice and consistent off the coast. So makes sense that that's kind of the growing capital of the old school world. That's where
oh, absolutely,
most of the weed that you and I were smoking growing up
oh
came
yeah,
from.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, a big part of that's just selecting your location, just to reduce your input costs. I mean, if you look at price per pound of production, it's quite a bit to grow inside up north compared to outside down south. It's just a simple reality.
Excellent, you guys. Thank you. And just a reminder for any of our attendees today, if you have any questions for Seth and Jason, please do type them in the chat. Our next question also comes from Instagram. This is from Easy Cloudy. They want to know, how do you determine VPD on your system without having a leaf temperature in the equation?
Sure. So great question. We get this one quite a bit. Vapor pressure deficit can be derived for any numbers. The VPD that we display in the system is an air VPD. So it's the environment VPD. So in this case, we're using the air temperature and relative humidity in the air to determine that VPD. Obviously, if you do want to do some leaf surface VPDs, then go in and take some leaf surface temperatures and run those VPD calculations. For me, the reason that I really like just using environment is because if I do want to change my leaf VPD, then I am actually going to be doing it from my environment. So I would rather just look at the root source of what's causing that that function of the plant, those parameters. Obviously, if you are modifying things like your lighting source, then you'll want to kind of keep in mind and recalibrate what you're used to seeing for an offset between leaf and environment VPDs.
Exactly. And also, I'll point out that in your quest to calculate leaf VPD, you're going to calculate air VPD. So it's a good starting point, and also it's reactive. You know, it's the most efficient way to gather that data. If we don't have a drone with a laser on it to go around quite yet and just sample all your leaf surface temperatures and then relate that to the climate station. Maybe someday in the future that kind of technology will be there, but right now we're still relying on manual human inputs to get there.
Yeah, and that's another great. If you are taking leaf surface temperatures, you're going to need to take quite a few samples to make sure that the data that you're using for that leaf surface is going to be a valuable data set. Obviously, when we look at the differences in leaf surface temperature, we're going to be looking at how deep they are in the canopy, how much airflow is hitting that specific leaf, what the transpiration rate of that leaf is. So, if it's an older leaf and it may not be transpiring quite as much, all of that's going to change that boundary layer, that humidity in the boundary layer, the temperature of that leaf surface that's dictating the leaf BPD.
Awesome, you guys. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm having some sound problems today. Okay, so we had someone submit a question here. They emailed it to us. They want to know, how often are you making updates to the dashboards and user experience for AROYA?
So we continuously make small improvements. If there's any bug fixes out there, we're very active taking care of that stuff. And then on a quarterly basis, we do run targeted update. So right now we're working on doing some tasking improvement, doing some manual reading type improvements as well. And we have a dedicated UX UI team that basically spends time investigating how the usage reports look like in our systems, talking with clients to get a better in-depth on what the clients are looking for, how they're using it, what slows them down in their daily processes during that usage.
Yeah, and I'll definitely add that a lot of our updates are, purposefully designed to not, fundamentally change the look of the dashboard. So unless you're looking at, the update window that pops up when they happen, it's not always immediately obvious that little feature's been added. Manual readings are a great example. Every once in a while, you'll be surprised when one just kind of pops up and you didn't notice the one little, statement in the update box. But, the idea is we don't want to change it so much that, you log in one day and you don't know where to find something.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you. This was a great question that we got written in here. Someone wrote, I'm having a hard time convincing my bosses that Arroyo is a good investment. What resources can you offer to help me pitch to them?
I think the first off would be, talking with some of our sales team members. They can help you build out an ROI calculation. They'll do a full demo talking about what the impacts that Arroyo can have for your plants and for the people that are operating your plants. And really the best conversation there is to bring that support to your bosses and talk a little bit about bringing transparency to the whole company, basically giving the company a source of documentation for how they're operating currently as far as cultivation parameters go. And anytime, there's staff changes or loss or any of that, it's really a great way to buffer and make sure that the company can keep their consistency through the dynamics of the industry and staffing.
Yeah, and if you're looking for like a specific easy resource, honestly, check out our Grower of the Month series. We've got a lot of great interviews where growers are talking from their perspective about, how Arroyo has helped them make their daily operations more efficient. And, even getting to the point where Arroyo is part of your turnkey business, if you're looking at this as a shorter term investment rather than a long-term ownership deal. For some people, that's been huge. Just saying, hey, we've quantified our operations here and it's easy. I may not have to stay on for 3 years to transition this company to new management. Whereas, if you don't have everything organized, it's pretty tough. And also, right now, that little bit of intellectual property in having your recipes and everything sorted out. So when you do want to give someone your magic recipe, you can. It's easy. It's right there. It's quantified, easy to follow, right down to, hey, here's how the graphs looked previously. Here's what you need to copy. Here's the instructions.
So go to AROYA.io. That's AROYA.io, and check out the resources page, book a demo. Encourage your boss to be part of the demo so that he can ask questions maybe to our team and offload some of the work that you're trying to translate uphill. We're happy to help. We want to do everything we can to get you using a system that makes your life better.
Oh yeah, and if they have questions that are not specific to maybe lean more towards the operations or horticultural side rather than the business side, we're always happy to get the resources to the customer that they need to make the choice.
Excellent, you guys. Thank you. A reminder that everybody's on with us. We had one or two people just join us. We're here to answer your questions live. So please do feel free to type any questions you have in the chat. This question also was written in. They're asking, can we get more info about the drying technology with Arroyo? Specifically also mentioning Aqualab as well.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning here. And I think we did do an episode a little bit on actually drying technology specifically with Susan earlier in the series. I think it was one of the first 5 videos. Maybe someone can look that up and point it to the question here. And then a couple weeks ago, I think we hit up on this as well. So basically, drying technology, when we think about, what happens to a product when it's too wet, you've got microbial growth, so things can spoil. We see this obviously in lots of food industries, and that's where the technology that we approach the cannabis industry has been developed in for the last 2 decades. And so we've worked with very large cereal companies. We work with a lot of jerky companies, snack bar companies, any processed goods that need to be safe for the shelf. Use a lot of our water activity technologies. So the Aqualab is one of the best, specifically for cannabis, and in quite a few of your states that you are getting certification analysis is done, those companies actually use our Aqualabs to test the product and make sure the water activity is safe for sale. And so water activity is slightly different than moisture content. They are related, but it is a product-specific isotherm that describes the relationship between those two. Obviously, water content is a by weight percentage of how much of that product is water. When we look at water activity, it's actually a specific, it's an energy related to the water levels in there. And so depending on the composition of a product, the water activity can be a little bit higher or lower at the same moisture content of a product. And so if we really want to dig into, one of the best reasons to use an Aqualab is because that water activity can actually get you a much more accurate moisture content than you could by using a traditional moisture content meter, whether that be a dry off meter or other types. And so, yeah, I think we've had a lot of clients that use Aqualabs separate from AROYA. They might be using it through some of the other modules that Meter Group offers. And I think last week we did our first install with AROYA tied in to the water activity to that Aqualab, and so they're pushing readings directly from their Aqualab into the AROYA drying module. It's currently a little bit early in our deployment, and I think we're going to make some pretty significant improvements based on the client feedback that we're seeing from this. And that's kind of how we develop all of our products, is get some of this stuff tested in the field and use the feedback that we get to really build the best product for a successful product launch. So how that's going to work in AROYA, well, when we look at a harvest group, its drying stage is just another part of that processing life cycle. So we've got obviously our clone stages, our veg stages, our flower stages, and drying is sometimes, I think, overlooked because it is quite a bit more simple than the cultivation cycle. It's faster. There's less complexity involved with inputs and labors, but it's also one that can make or break how much energy is going into that harvest group. So obviously, if we've got 10 weeks to get to a product into dry, in a week we could really jeopardize the quality of that product going through. And so implementing something like water activity, taking those measurements every day so that you're getting the product out at the right water activity and moisture content levels is going to be a good way to solidify the standard operating principles at your company.
Oh, absolutely. And you can actually, right now, a lot of our customers put the Atmos 41 up in the dry room, so you can take these two data points and start to build out your ideal drying routine. Or say, wow, we're having problems. Looks like we actually can't take our humidity out quick enough for the first 2 days. That's a common thing when you've got let's say a retrofitted building and your dry room just isn't quite big enough. So you're starting to look at, okay, well, now we got to make some upgrades. We have recognized the wall. We hit it. All right, how are we going to fix it? Moving on. And, really, it's all about consistency. The old snap test is great, but as growers, we're always trying to improve our product, improve our techniques, and some of those improvements result in, let's say, different bud structures. So certain strains that we dial in, let's say, ripening on a lot better, we might end up with a lot denser bud structure. So over time, we might even end up modifying our drying techniques just so we can maintain that consistency, despite the fact that there's this small variation in our actual product. We can test it right on the spot and say, okay, yeah, this one does need another day. But whereas last time, maybe it took 10 days and this time we're running 11, we can make that call with confidence now.
Yeah, and so obviously by tracking this in AROYA, you've got a great library, a historical breakdown of what that growth cycle did in cultivation and what it did in the dry room. Maybe we didn't track what was happening in the dry room, and we had actually a really great run that we may not have actually known was a great run by the time we got drying because of some mistakes made in the drying room. And so it's just a really nice balance to keep everybody responsible and accountable for what happens every stage of this process. And so when we think about how this works on site, you go in your dry room on a daily basis, take a few samples, depending on how many different strains you have in there, take a few samples so that you can characterize the different spots in the room, maybe a little bit different bud size or position that it came from on the plant itself, and get yourself a nice data set to make the best prediction possible in there. And so what our system is doing is basically running an algorithm on those daily water activities. And once it's got enough data to make a good prediction, it's going to say, hey, you should take that product out of the room at day 9.5. Maybe you're always doing it at day 9 or day 10. Well, we're going to say you need to be in there in 9 days and 14 hours or whatever that specific product turns out to be. And that can obviously save you a little bit of time and gets you just way closer to the best product that you can. Couple of things to kind of keep in mind there is, even though the end of the dry room is kind of the end of the cycle in the AROYA harvest groups, there is a couple more steps that the product goes through before it hits the consumer's hands. things like processing rooms, trimming rooms, we always recommend people keep those at a good humidity as well. So if you're shooting for around that 0.6 water activity range, then keep your processing rooms at about 60% humidity. So when we talk about water activity in the bud at 0.6, that's going to equilibrate at 60% humidity. So if we're trimming and processing plants in a 60% humidity room and they're at 0.6 water activity, they're going to stay at 0.6 even when they're exposed to the open environment in that room.
Yeah, I think the saying in the whiskey industry is the angel share, where it takes a little bit of the alcohol evaporates off while they're aging it. We don't want that in weed. We don't need to have it. we have the capability to prevent that, and it's really, really simple. Just monitoring and then continuing to test. You can always test right up to the point of packaging and say, all right, where can we identify that this potentially lost a little bit of moisture? If we're recovering, a gram here and there, even on a couple ounces, that adds up when we're pushing even, let's say 50 pounds in a room. If I'm picking up half a gram on every ounce, that adds up really quick at scale. So that's just not losing your hard work. And, going back to what Jason said about, really, really getting those dry down techniques consistent. It is the worst thing to see people just succeed so well with some of these crop steering techniques and, get their biggest, best harvest they've ever had and then go, how do I dry it? I don't have enough room. Like, what do we do here? Just rolling in more dehues and doing anything they can because now they're outgrowing their facility.
Awesome, you guys. Man, so good. So much good information. I have another question here. We just got this from Instagram, and it comes from Frosted Organics LLC. They write, what do you think about 5 gallons in commercial with direct feed with netty? I'm co-director of cultivation for a beautiful 10,000 square foot, $2.5 million facility in Oklahoma City. We're about 15 days out from having plants in the build, and my co-director of cultivation wants to go with 5-gallon pots. In my opinion, that's way too big. Just curious on what your thoughts were.
I agree.
Yep, completely. That's way too big. It's going to be, unless you're going to grow 14-foot tall plants and try to steer them, which is just not feasible in a commercial operation. You want to turn those plants as quick as possible. Huge medium size is not the way to go. And then also, you want to find a balance for your inputs. If you're spending 3 to 5 times the amount you need to on media for every plant, that's not a sustainable business model. Or, maybe it's sustainable for you, but it's not as profitable as it should be.
And I talk about, kind of a disclaimer. Any of our crop steering techniques and the types of training that we do is with the assumption that you are using the appropriate sized media. So if you go in with a 5-gallon, you just try and run based on the drybacks and EC stacking that we talk about, it's just not going to be a great recipe. In something like a 5-gallon, you're holding so much water capacity that until those plants are 10 feet plus, like Seth is talking about, you're not going to ever hit those target water contents and be able to steer the EC as you want. And, conversely, on the other side of that, if our substrate's way too small, maybe we're only running a 6x6x6 and we've got, 5-foot plants, you're not going to be able to steer because you don't have enough water capacity. You're always going to be having to have a wide irrigation window. That plant's going to, it's kind of weird because you'll be steering it veg, but it's actually going to be feeling a generative response simply because of the massive dry downs. It's just running out of water content. So having the appropriate sized media is probably, next to environment is the most important things that you can do to set up the facility and be ready for success using substrate sensors, environment sensors, crop steering technology, and getting on board with standardized projectable crop cycles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A lot of people are finding that even what's interesting, I've noticed, the industry trend is you go too big, then you go too small, and then you find, the appropriate size that is for your plants in your facility. Because depending on your overhead height and your environment, obviously it's a little tunable. Some people have the best success with Rockwool slabs. Some people are having the best success for them with 2-gallon cocoa versus a 1-gallon cocoa. But the real thing is we need to be able to get, well over a 10% dryback every day overnight to be able to steer. If we have to just wait and wait for that, we can't give it enough irrigation events and really send much of a signal to the plant in either direction.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of get some recommendations out there, because obviously, when you're working with other people, it's always best to come to a solution. Come to a conversation with solutions rather than just saying that, hey, the way we're doing this is a problem. So, if you do need to be on the bigger size of a media, let's say you are growing 5-6 foot plants and pushing things pretty hard with nice high light intensity CO2 supplementation. I would go with, say a 2-gallon cocoa bag. The dehydrated cocoa that comes in those cocoa blocks. They're already pre-bagged. They're really reasonable to purchase. It's easy to store them because they don't take up very much space. Hydrate those bad boys up and stick your Terrace 12s in there. The plastic sides, it's a square bag. The plastic sides usually allow that Terrace 12 to go right in smooth. It's a very compatible media with how we like to run.
Oh yeah, and then even extending that as far as your operations go, logistically, taking out that extra step of physically potting up all of your media is hugely popular with employees. I can definitely promise that. No one loves bending down and potting up pots particularly, or they might a few times, but it wears on you for sure, especially when there's this alternative where you're reducing labor and sometimes reducing costs depending on what kind of media you were looking at previously. If you're looking at a loose fill bag and you're paying to ship pallets and pallets that could be condensed, if 10 pallets could be condensed to 1 or 2, that's also a big shipping savings. There's a lot of advantages.
I thought that's how you kept your employees motivated, Seth. The worst performers are cleaning pots every day, all day long.
No, this is the future now.
Okay.
We don't have to scrub pots.
All right.
I don't ever want to do it again.
I'll work for you then.
All right, fair.
Excellent, you guys. Thank you. Okay. We got this question also came in from Instagram. This comes from Freddie Dosis and I'll pose this to you, Seth, Jason. Also, we have our team member John on the line as well. So maybe he would like to chime in. But Freddie Dosis writes, so just curious, who I could reach out to try out your equipment. Currently using GrowLink for environmental fertigation and substrate data and automation with 60 Terrace 12 meters in use throughout the facility. Looking at your hardware software that does log data over time, I'm under the assumption the Solus doesn't data log and just able to check real time only.
Correct on the Solus. It is just a spot checking device.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to get an idea of what our system does firsthand, schedule a demo. Go to AROYA.io, click on the schedule a demo, check out some of our resources stuff. We put a lot of energy into education, into working with the clients that have been successful with our products, getting an idea of how they've used it, what they like about it, what their plans are going forward for the future. So yeah, check out those Growers of the Month, some of our blog channels, watch other open office hours, and schedule a demo is going to be the way that you get your hands into looking at what our system does. And so you get kind of an idea of how we've involved annotations, so being manual readings, tasking, building this into a digital grow journal that attributes the data as well as saves and logs that data. So that's just kind of the start of our capabilities. Obviously, we've gone into metric integrations. We're doing some dry module stuff now. Here in the next few months, we're on our way to launching our open sprinkler integrations. And so we're happy to have a really solid foundation of great growers that we work with, great development teams that we work with, and some staff members that have cultivation experience that are all involved in a team that has built this product. So go check us out. Give us a call. We want to work with you.
Absolutely. And our sales team's definitely very comfortable and talented at talking to anyone. If you need to convince someone in your organization, they'll take the time and work with you to make that happen. There's quite a few growers out there that, how would I put this? They'll bet the cost of that first Arroyo room, bet that against their boss, and then I haven't seen one of them fail at it yet. Every time they end up expanding, a lot of times even before they get the harvest off of that first room, because suddenly they let, upper management log in and see what's going on, and they're just really happy about that. They're like, wow, we can monitor your progress every day. Well, we didn't a lot of times that message is kind of sometimes lost, that this is something that also you can bring together the whole organization. not just necessarily your cultivators. It can be, back to what Jason said earlier, transparency throughout your company.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you. I actually received we got a write-in here. And this is a perfectly timed question considering what you just talked about. They want to know, what is your criteria for filtering customers? Is there a defined grow size limit or facility requirements I need to meet?
Yeah, so the first requirement would be we usually only sell to licensed facilities. So we do ask for your license ID. And then as far as minimum facility, we do 1,000 square foot as a minimum. Obviously, if you're smaller than that, you can purchase 1,000 square foot system and just use it on what smaller size that you're operating on. But those are our minimums in order to be a purchasing eligible client.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. It's not that we are discriminatory against the home growers by any means. Obviously, we have the Solus. A big part of it is some FCC radio regulations that require us to operate in a commercial setting. So although we're developing some radio hardware for the future that will be compliant for that, right now, we just aren't quite there yet. That's really the big thing. It's kind of funny that a law regulating radio frequencies would affect our ability to sell to certain cannabis growers after, years and years of cannabis being illegal. But that's kind of how it shakes out for now, unfortunately. That being said, we do have several customers that are in that sub 1,000 square foot bracket that are medical growers. So it doesn't hurt to reach out and see what it takes if you need anything, or maybe all you got to do is go renew your green card in your situation. It's worth an ask for sure. It doesn't cost you any money, and our sales team's always happy to work with you and tell you how it is, whether you qualify or not.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Someone else asked, this was a great question. Does the Arroyo team do consulting, or do I need to commit to the full platform in order to talk to someone about my grow?
Yeah, so we don't do consulting. We staff agronomic advisors. So Seth is, one of our client success managers here. He does agronomic advising as a part of the subscription. If you're not a subscribed client, then we don't offer that as a service. If you are a subscribed client and you need more in-depth agronomics, you need someone to come hit the site, then we do offer some fee-based services that are beyond the contract and the subscription. So that's how we help.
Yep, and I do want to stress that's why we call ourselves crop advisors here, not so much consultants, because our place is to help teach you these tools. We are not in the business of making your day-to-day operational decisions for you. That's not practical for us right now, and not necessarily where we're trying to go with this. We're trying to help a lot of people learn these principles much more than, and realistically too, a lot of our customers already have consultants that they're working with. And on the other side of that, we're also happy to have some conversations with you if you feel that your facility may not be up to par to run Arroyo, if you're worried that you can't crop steer. We are happy to look at some of those parameters with you and say, okay, yes, buy Arroyo, or go buy a lot of HVAC equipment and then hit us up in a month, because we would much rather help you be successful even a little bit before you buy it, if it's going to help us get the product to you. We don't want you to buy our product and then realize, oh, I just spent all this money, just to find out that my facility needs to have a lot more money spent on it, when it's something that sometimes we can look at it and just say, wow, you're under capacity for what your goals are here.
Exactly. If your decision is, hey, I need to either buy Arroyo or automated drip irrigation system, the drip system is going to be your first step. And then when you get Arroyo, you'll be able to pay all that stuff off based on the improvements that you see in yields and reduced labor costs.
Yep. But yeah, conversely, if you don't have a drip system and you buy Arroyo and attempt to crop steer, you're probably just going to pump your labor cost way up with you or someone you pay to go drag a hose around all day in an attempt to do this. So yeah, we like I said, we're happy to have those conversations with people for sure.
Awesome. That's great. Just a reminder to folks who are on with us today in the next few minutes, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Please do put them in the chat. We've got a bunch of write-ins this week. Love it. Somebody asked, what's the status on an outdoor system for Arroyo?
It kind of depends on the definition of outdoor that you're talking about. We do hoop houses. We got lots of clients in hoop houses. I think we did a sale the other day that's got 90 hoop houses on quite a bit of acreage. That looks very much like the indoor Arroyo system. So running Atmos 14s for your climates, or the Arroyo climate station, if you will. It's got the repeater in the Atmos 14. Terrace 12s attached to the Arroyo nose. Usually for those types of setups, we are talking about above ground hydroponic setups. So most of the time, it is most useful to be having drip systems. Usually in like a hoop house, we'll be in say 3-gallon, 5-gallon cocoa, or some mixed medias. Obviously out there, you are getting a lot more micromoles. Usually you've got a little bit longer season. You're not trying to turn quite as fast as indoor. So you will usually use a little bit larger substrate. You can get it down with a little bit smaller substrates, especially if you're auto flowering, trying to get those 3 cycles into the summer. So hardware wise, really not looking a lot different than indoor. As far as if we're talking about field crop, in living soil, just in the dirt, we don't necessarily have a real clean option for that right now, but we do encourage you to call in, talk to us about what your setup is, and if there's some ways that we can work on our product in the long run to try and start addressing some of those needs.
Yeah, I think the big difference comes down to whether you're in the ground or in pots. If you're in pots, it's going to be pretty simple to implement. If you're in the ground, we're going to want to spend some time talking about, your specific situation, whether you're in raised beds, furrows, potted up living soil. There's a lot of different things we need to talk about and figure out, what kind of sensor suite would suit your needs best, and what you are going to be actually able to realistically do in that media, So give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about it. The outdoor growers are so interesting because that's such a broad term. And the other thing is, do you have internet there? When you say outdoor, like, okay, we are very remote. We have no landline to the site. Well, okay, we got to figure out what's going on. That's, obviously a big part of what we do is using the internet.
That being said, though, we do have some hoop houses up in the hills of Humboldt that are running their Arroyo gateways off of satellite internet or 4G cell hotspot. Those are both realistic options for running an Arroyo gateway.
Absolutely.
Lots of resourcefulness in the Emerald Triangle, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So this is a fun one because it's a little more insight into you guys personally, but someone wrote in your opinion, what grows the best weed, greenhouse or controlled facility?
If it's a perfect greenhouse, then there really shouldn't be any difference at all.
I was going to say, those are the same thing. If your greenhouse is built well.
But the reality of that is it is much, much more challenging to operate in a greenhouse that has the control that an indoor does. And this is really where we see, a lot of the highest quality products coming out is because they've been through many iterations of growing cycles in the exact same parameters. They maybe just making slight adjustments, intended adjustments to how that crop cycle is affected by environmental and substrate conditions. And when we're working in greenhouse, we got seasonal things to combat. We've got a lot more pest pressures. Some of the newer greenhouses we're working on positive pressure, which helps with that type of stuff. But when we were cultivating right here up in the Blues, harvest time would come around, August, and the pest pressure would come to the roof as all the wheat was getting cut down. Those bugs, those pests were looking for a nice warm living home, and it just happens that was our cannabis greenhouse that they would find as all their natural wheat home got cut down. And
the green
every year.
Just watch the combines go out and go, all right, well, let's make sure we're all stocked up.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing some spraying here.
Yeah. I personally have a huge passion for automating greenhouses. That's what got me into this industry was doing programming for the HVAC controls, for pumps, for fans, for lighting automation, blackouts, making sure that stuff was working in collaboration as best as it could to offset the environmental changes outside. And up here, it's pretty common this time of year. Here in a month or two, will be 40 degrees in the morning and 75 by 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And so using conditional programming in your greenhouse is the best way. We need to know what that outside environment is doing so that we can control the interior motors and fans, pumps, vents as best as possible. Keep the variations as minimal as we can. And probably the easiest one there is making sure that you're running supplemental light based on a DLI target. So if you're shooting for a DLI of say 40 to 45, which is a great range for starting with, and then make sure that your lights are turning on enough in the early day and later in the day. And then if you run on a cloudy day, make sure that those lights are on enough to achieve the DLI that you need. That'll really help stabilize your irrigation parameters and make steering become a happy reality rather than a daily change to try and combat transpirations based on changing DLI. So I always recommend, if you can, run your lights dynamically based off of a light sensor. So if we're getting less than a certain threshold, then we need to turn our lights to a specific point. And, obviously LEDs, the solid state industry of LEDs is awesome for doing supplemental because we've usually got a fairly infinite control of between 0 and 100% intensity. And so rather than being on or off, we're turning on a certain amount of bays of lights to try and supplement at the right level. You can just fluctuate that, make sure it's run off a controller that does that.
Yeah, and I think that, that really kind of highlights when we are talking about growing, like say high quality boutique flower, our goal is consistency and doing it the same every time. And in greenhouse and indoor, you have like kind of a divergent route to get to the same thing. With the greenhouse, we are working with dynamic techniques and trying to perfect those. But really, they're dynamic, so it's always going to be changing. What we're doing is making our skills and ability to interpret data and make the correct choice better. Indoor, we're chasing more of a static environment where we can be very repeatable, very controlled. It's just a divergent path. Both can have great results. It just depends on what's going to work for you. If your time to put in or your given space is limited, the greenhouse might not be the thing for you. Especially with that learning curve. Your first couple of years running a greenhouse, you're going to have a lot of challenges to face, especially depending on what latitude you're at and your elevation. Those extremes just become very difficult to deal with. Even in the greenhouse, you might have your environment inside great, and then suddenly it seems like it's raining from the ceiling just because of the humidity and temperature differential from outside. So in my opinion, if you are right now trying to get a cannabis business up and running, the greenhouse in, let's say, a space that has high property cost is definitely, probably more of a risk than going with something that you can get set up in a static environment or as a fairly static environment. But on the flip side, if you can get the space and, you're willing to really spend time dialing that and recognize that even if you talk to me, who, for over 10 years, greenhouse growing all kinds of crops here on the Palouse, if I move to Arizona next month, that first year is still going to be a rodeo for me. Just because I can do a lot of math, I can make some choices, but I'm pretty used to seeing a certain thing in greenhouse operation, or wanting certain goals, and those change regionally quite drastically. So I think for a lot of people just getting into it, if your goal is boutique flower right now, high prices, you're shoring up your bets a little bit by going inside and having, easier environmental control.
Absolutely. And kind of just maybe the last point that we didn't talk about was, very large greenhouses. Maybe someone's grown cannabis in an old cut flower facility, doesn't have maybe the automation controls, doesn't have supplemental. You might change the way that you evaluate your productivity and start thinking about grams per mole. of produce, and that way, rather than always having a cyclical, say, our grams per square foot in the summer is X amount, and our grams per square foot in the winter is Y amount. If we go by grams per mole, then it always should be consistent to tell us that, hey, we are tailoring our nutrient levels, the way that we're treating these crops year round at the same efficiency based on our limiting factor of sunlight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and in the greenhouse, a lot of times we can compensate because our yields are going to fluctuate, but cost per pound of production might be quite a bit lower, given the facility. If you combine like cheaper land, less light inputs, less heat inputs, given the time of the year. Yeah, maybe it's not quite the mechanical factory that has a fixed output every day, but it's a different metric for success. And as long as you're planning correctly from the beginning, you'll still come out on top, or you'll still be in the green, rather.
Nice.
I feel like I just got a master class in indoor craft cultivation. Man, that was great. Thank you, guys. It really is an art and a science, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have our last write-in questions. This will be our last question for the session today. This person was wondering, when it comes to other crops, not just weed, what value can Arroyo add? Do we know of anyone using Arroyo for something other than cannabis?
I
think we only have cannabis. Yeah, me.
I think we grow our vegetable gardens with it. It's pretty awesome. It's right now cannabis really as an industry just offered the growers with enough capital to really want to get into it. In traditional agriculture, it's really hard to sometimes justify certain investments when there's especially, let's say, outdoor and field cultivation. Like, monitoring is very important for making certain choices, but say here on the Palouse, it's all dryland farming. So we rely on the rain. So year to year, there are choices you can make, but regarding irrigation, no. So, our customers here on the Palouse use weather stations. As far as, I don't know, if I was a berry producer, I would probably want to have something like Arroyo eventually to really steer my crops and push production, because in those economies of scale, just like in big cannabis and small cannabis, any little improvement adds up pretty quick. 1% can be a big number if then, in the right circumstance.
Yeah, and if we think about really where a lot of cannabis grape growing has come from as far as greenhouse construction goes, operating principles, we look at the Netherlands. They're one of the largest producers of fruit in the world, and they're a very small footprint country. The way that they do it is extraordinarily high efficiency greenhouses, where they're cramming in the amount of produce that they can produce. So I think what they're doing in greenhouses is probably the golden standard of what we're likely to see in cannabis production here in the United States in the coming years. And if we do look into those greenhouses, almost all of them that are cultivating at scale are using substrate sensors. Maybe they're using load cells. They're monitoring the same things that we in Arroyo are monitoring for production. And that's how they keep their consistency very consistent. Their yield very consistent, their quality very consistent, and are able to produce at that level that they are.
Yep, absolutely. Once we, I think as we see further and further legalization and kind of a normalization of business practices in the cannabis industry, we'll see a lot more of these really high-tech greenhouses coming into play over here in the States. It takes time. You've got to have the capital to build some of these facilities. I mean, I can't remember the name of the company, but in Canada, there's one, I believe, that's almost 17 acres under greenhouse. Well, that's a significant investment if you're a startup, especially in the US, where you're relying on investors or your own investment to get your company going. It's got to be steps.
Yeah, and really, I think what's driven the indoor ag culture of cannabis is, one, obviously the legality concerns, and so that's how it's been done for so long, simply to reduce the liability of growing cannabis. And so now those practices are being scaled up, and they're being produced at the amount of demand that we see now. Obviously, that is really hard on our earth. It's really hard on our environment, using that much electricity, using ACs all day long to be growing cannabis is really draining on renewables, on the energy that we produce in the country. And so I personally, I'm trying to push the envelope of what I do with greenhouses, the way that we control them, how efficient we can be in those, because I think it's a really important step for the industry to open up and build greenhouses that can produce at the quality that we see in indoor today.
Yeah, unfortunately for being full of environmentally conscious people, right now cannabis is an unfortunately dirty industry when it comes to a lot of indoor production and outdoor production, to be fair. So over time, yeah, I agree with Jason. We're going to be moving towards more of those practices as, let's face it, over the years, it's unlikely that the cost of power is going to go down. The cost of growing equipment's not going to go down. So over time, there's going to be more and more incentive for growers to embrace greenhouse growing. And especially, also embrace sensing equipment, precision tools that allow you to really dial in your grow and be very efficient. One thing we're seeing with Arroyo is a lot of people reducing the amount of runoff they're running, saving a lot of money on fertilizer, because instead of running a really high EC, they're running, a low to medium EC feed and stacking it up. They realize they don't need to flush that much fertilizer down the drain every day. And not only is that better for the environment, but they save money too. That's kind of, it's finding pennies inside your facility, and those pennies add up really, really quickly a lot of times, depending on where your starting point is.
Yeah. So, to be growing the most efficiently, all your inputs need to be balanced to match the level of production that the other inputs are capable of allowing the plant to do.
Such a great reminder, right? That sustainability aspect, especially we're on Earth Day. It's an exciting time, a lot of innovation. Just try to get to a point where we're treating the planet as well as we're treating these amazing plants.
Oh, absolutely. And, one thing I think that's a kind of a problem in a lot of agriculture, and I couldn't tell you what the solution is a lot of times if you are breaking some environmental laws and stuff like that, you don't have someone from the government that's constantly consulting with you and telling you what choice to make. So if you're not knowledgeable going into some of these choices, you're going to get hurt on the back end rather than, being even knowing that it was a problem. And that's really unfortunate. And that's not unique to cannabis. That happens to all kinds of people in the nursery industry and vegetable production industry everywhere, making a choice and then dealing with the repercussions down the line with insurance, whatever. Court, rezoning, all that fun stuff that we want to avoid, really, in the end.
Perfect. Seth and Jason, what a great conversation. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to everybody who joined us for office hours today. If you have any questions about AROYA, how it can be used to improve your cultivation production process, or any other topic you'd like covered during office hours, please do post it in the chat. Send us an email to support.aroya@metergroup.com, or send us a DM over Instagram. We want to hear from you. We record every session. We will email everyone in attendance a link to the video from today's discussion. It also live on the AROYA YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and share while you're there. And if you find these conversations helpful, please do spread the word. Seth and Jason, I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Keisha.
Thanks, Keisha. See you next week.